Well, good evening, everyone. Hi, welcome to back to class. I hope everybody's doing well here at the end of times. And we can at least hopefully push forward into greater depth and greater humanity because somebody has to do it. So we might as well be the ones or among the ones who take that stand. So I seem to remember, I made these videos you're watching, I all made before the course started. I made them last spring and summer. And I seem to remember that the one on will I thought was maybe the best I had ever talked about it. At the time, I just remember feeling kind of moved myself after finishing it and feeling like I had got into a new place. And a few people emailed me and said that they really enjoyed this video and thought they got some depth out of it. And of course, the class we're doing is on soul. When we talk about waking up, there are various degrees of waking up. I mean, and waking up is relative, it's forever. The idea traditionally was one got enlightened, and enlightenment was the end of development. But we now have enough time in and enough top-down perspective on history, and having discovered the evolutionary context, we realize development is forever, or at least meaningfully forever in relationship to our lifetime. It'll be for the rest of our lives. So when we talk about waking up, in this context, we're talking about discovering deeper and wider and higher dimensions of the self beyond ego that most of our lives, most of our early lives, and for most people, for most people on the planet, most all of their life is consumed by relating to and from and knowing themselves as ego. And superego, the dimension of the self that was born in time and has a certain amount of life experience and is conditioned by culture. And most of us have known ourselves as that most of our life, and waking up infers the softening of those boundaries so that we start to discover greater and greater and more compelling dimensions of the self. And so, if we look at the gross realm of the self, we can say, well, the body, the physical body that you can put on a scale is the most gross realm, just the matter of it, the matter that has weight and mass and size and age. And then the more subtle part, the next step into subtlety would be those dimensions of the mind that reflect back to us the apparent reality of the separate self. And that's more, those are aspects of mind, and mind is more subtle than matter, but there's still the gross aspects of the mind because they reflect that each thing has a name and everything is different and everything is separate. And then when we talk about the subtle dimension of the self, it has a lower and higher aspect, and that lower aspect is covered by what we know as psychology, the functioning of the mind, which is the dynamic relationship of all the mind's contents and capacities to each other. And then the more subtle dimension is the soul. And we can say that the soul is the most subtle dimension of the self that still has a personal aspect to it. That when we step beyond the soul, we're stepping into clear white light and clear white light, clear white light for me and clear white light for you and clear white light for everything and everyone is just impersonal and the same. And that would be the realm of spirit. So I remember 26, 27 years ago. Yeah, I guess I was finishing up. I was somewhere in writing Nourishing Destiny, probably coming to the end. Maybe it was longer ago than that. It was somewhere three-quarters of the way through Nourishing Destiny, and I was researching what the soul was and talking to people about it, and just reading about it in books in different traditions, and getting kind of an intellectual understanding of it. And I thought somewhere I'd read what the soul was, and it'd be settled, right? Like it'd just be settled. And what I realized is the soul was what the soul is, and what actually all these dimensions of the self are, is just an ongoing conversation. And we're really just getting started with it. Um, and I remember being then, so at some point, I got to the point where I could like speak about it and think about it and even teach about it. The Hun this and the Po that and the Ling and Soul. I had information. But I remember the insight during meditation in a retreat where all of a sudden the soul became a reality for me. And the experience was I was just sitting in a chair in a room with, I don't know, 125 other people, and a teacher was teaching and was teaching about the soul. And my eyes were closed and I was taking it in, and all of a sudden it came like, those those pictures you look at where you sort of focus and then you blur your eyes and all of a sudden it becomes three-dimensional and you start seeing patterns or words that you couldn't see in all the dots. So I had that kind of experience where all of a sudden everything went zoop and gained like an infinite dimensionality. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, there it is. And the soul became like a living reality. And that is a living reality of a vastly greater and more compelling depth than ego can ever offer. That ego is, by contrast, sort of one or two dimensional and sort of inherently suffocating and limited in possibility. And ego's sole concerns are incarnationally with this incarnation. And its sole concern is, am I getting what I want when I want it? It's a 2-year-old. And it's not happy when it doesn't get what it wants, right? It throws temper tantrums like a 2-year-old. The soul, by contrast, offers a view of lifetimes, lifetimes, lifetimes. Now, in the traditions will say, well, I just met with a very dear man, Pema Dragpa, and his wife, Amanda, who is an acupuncturist, and we meet every year on my retreat because I go to the Tibetan monastery where they reside, and every Sunday of my retreat, after I've meditated a bunch of days, we have tea. And he was saying, well, when you become the first level bodhisattva, you can just look at a person and know all their lifetimes and everything that happened and all your connections with them. I think it's just myth. It's just mythic. It doesn't mean there isn't some individual maybe who wouldn't be able to have a good spiel about it. But how do you know? It hasn't been my experience at any rate. My experience in awakening to soul and that depth is of an infinite depth open that extends all the way back and all the way forward, and all the way back and all the way forward are a depth that always exists in this moment, not in the past and not in the future, but always an infinite depth in the present moment. And it doesn't, for me, have any particular content associated with it. It's just that unending depth and sense of depth and a sense of being in a process that's infinite. And whereas my experience in ego was always, it has to happen now, and my book needs to get done, and this has to get done, and whatever I'm doing, I wish it was over so I could get to the next thing, which for me, is probably from being gallbladder and wood. But I think that it's generally the ego's experience. And the ego is impatient and the ego wants it all to happen now. The ego wants to be the one to enlighten the student. The ego wants to be the one to heal the patient. The ego wants to be the one, the man, the woman, the one who does it. And from the soul's point of view, there's just a profound realization that we've all been in each other's lives, we're all in each other's lives, and we come together for short periods of time. Even if it's 90 years, my parents have been together. My father's almost 93, my mother's 88. They have been together over 70 years, married for 69, and together about 3 years before that. And it's all just the blink of an eye. And realizing this, one realizes the sacredness of the time we have together and doesn't take any moment for granted and understands the Bodhisattva's vow saying, may no one who interacts with me ever have an insignificant contact. There's a poignancy and there's an imperative in every moment to listen and to care. And there's a deep patience that happens, which is commensurate with a profound ease of being in comparison to the ego's inherently limited sort of suffocation, which is to realize that to move beyond personal self-development, to realize that we're working with the fundamental forces of creation, with consciousness itself, and there's only one consciousness, and we have direct access to it, and this work will be forever. And this is the work we're doing, and it's the work I'm doing now. And it'll be the work I'm doing when I'm playing with my band, and when I'm writing, and when I'm teaching, and when I'm treating patients, and when I'm interacting with other human beings, that there's only one thing to do, and there's only one work. We can understand the soul as the intermediary between the gross dimensions of the self and the very subtle spiritual dimensions of the self. We can understand the soul to be the intermediary between the body and clear white light. And the soul strives for union between those things, between the body, the psyche, the mind, and spirit. The soul strives for union with all of it. The soul is luminous. And so, maybe I've repeated some of what I said. I think some of what I said is new. And I'm happy to take, well, before I take questions, let me just say again that some traditions, there are some traditions of Buddhism that say, well, there's no such thing as the soul. And that's totally valid from a certain point of view. It's just that same tradition also says there's no such thing as the chair you're sitting on, but you're sitting on it. So, so I would say that the soul is as real as anything else. And in the context of my teaching, at least, and in my understanding, and in the tradition I'm trying to convey, and the medicine I'm trying to teach, um, the soul is something we're responsible for and responsible for cultivating in this life. And what we're looking for is a profound integration of it with all the dimensions of the self that we've covered in this class and will go on covering. So I think I've said what I need to say. So anyway, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Don't all raise your hand at once. Okay, everyone can raise their hands at once. Hey, Julie,
Hello.
I remembered you said you were going to talk to me every class, but you didn't talk to me last time.
No, there was the one in January. I was flying back from Hawaii.
I just want you to know that I pay attention.
Thank you.
What's up, Julie? Hi.
Well, I was wondering, I really been enjoying the when we meet with the cohort,
Yes,
the intersubjective conversation we have.
yes.
And when you were talking about the soul, it felt to me that when we have that conversation, with the intersubjective is basically a soul conversation. It's
I think that it's my experience, there are several experiences. I mean, many I have, but there are some fundamental dimensions that tend to be the same, which is that when intersubjectivity really opens up in a collective of two or more people, there is both the sense of greater depth, which would be the soul dimension, as well as greater luminosity, greater a greater height. You can literally sometimes feel it. The area beneath your feet opens up into an infinity, which is a soul depth, and the area above your head sort of opens up into a much greater brightness. And when we talk about soul, it's ephemeral, but everybody here knows when they're looking at a painting or watching a dance or listening to a musician, when they're moved in their soul and when there's transmission of soul. And everybody here also knows when when it's absent from those things. Everyone can tell the difference between hopefully a real picture of, you know, like a beautiful bird perched in a tree and some AI picture, these ridiculous AI pictures going around. And you look at them on Facebook and they have 2,000 likes. And you realize most of humanity can't tell the difference. Just can't tell the difference. That's the thing. AI doesn't have a soul. It's never going to have a soul, ever, until they fuse it with biology, and then all bets are off. And they're working on that. But as long as it's machines, there's no soul there. Do you have any other insights into it, Julie, or questions?
Well, what I've been because you were asking last time, what's when we work in our clinic, what has been changing since
Yes.
we've been doing that course, and for me, it's being able to listen. Because when I was listening to a patient, I would always think about, what can I do to help? What should I say? And now I'm being able to just be there, like like having that soul presence, like caring, listening, and that's it. And I just love that.
I'm sure that is also very moving for your
Mhm.
patients as well. Um, I've been told so many times over the years, like people just get stunned. Like when I would do these hour and a half to 2 hour intakes, and so many people would say, nobody has
Mhm.
ever listened to me like that or paid attention to me like that in my entire life. And that just sets, we doing that to them sets the foundation for them beginning to listen to themselves,
Mhm.
which in a way that actually cultivates true self-respect. The ego can never actually have self-respect because there's the deep unconscious knowing that it's a fraud.
Mhm.
This is a whole other level of respect that comes from taking oneself seriously, but the self one is taking seriously includes the personal, but transcends it to extend a great care.
Yeah. And many of them, they just start crying because nobody had just being there listening, and it's so beautiful.
It really is.
Yeah. Thank
That's
you.
that's wonderful to hear. That's really one of the core and foundations of this whole teaching.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Hey, Griffin.
Hi, Lonnie.
Hey.
Um, I realized that I wasn't clear on the difference between the soul, the authentic self, and the voice of conscience.
Sure.
I spent some time talking to each of them in myself to try to tease it out, and I got some answers, but I want to hear you talk about it.
So the authentic self is roughly synonymous with Eros, the creative impulse, the life force, the evolutionary impulse. The authentic self, if we say that the fundamental aspect of the absolute is emptiness and luminosity. And luminosity, emptiness is just empty of content, but luminosity is consciousness, awareness, the capacity to make a choice. And that choice is to become. That choice to become is the yes of the mythical, metaphorical Big Bang, the explosion at the center of um, creation, which human beings experience explicitly, for instance, as orgasm. And the authentic self is the manifestation of that yes at successively higher levels until it explodes at the heart, explodes at the level of the mind, in a way that one renounces being a victim and discovers that who we are is in fact the one that initiated this whole affair. So it's the purely positive, straight ahead, damn the torpedoes. Bags are packed, ready to go. Nothing in the way, no excuses, right here, right now. That's the authentic self. Okay. So that is clear white light that is invested within us at conception as the life force that just makes one cell go to two and two go to four and the arms and legs develop and pushes and pushes and pushes till it starts rising up the spine, awakening at higher and higher centers. That's the authentic self. It's just going to it's just going to greet every obstacle and every challenge in life as an opportunity for development, sheer positivity. The soul is a dimension of ourselves which, in the traditions, transmigrates from lifetime to lifetime and is the repository of our entire histories. And in any given lifetime is sort of the vehicle through which light can push so that the light within meets the light without. And there's just one light. The soul is a manifestation in a way of Jing and carries the life curriculum, which is Ming, which is destiny. So that in any given incarnation, your soul carries the record of all the experience you've had and all the choices you've made in relationship to that experience and how far you've gotten with any of it, so that in any given incarnation, the lessons that you've already mastered in previous lives have to be relearned again in this incarnation. I mean, just because you learned to ride a bike in your last life doesn't mean at one you can hop on a bike and ride it. You have to learn again. But it means that the lessons that you've already mastered, you get through pretty quickly, and you get right up to where you stopped in the last life, and then have to keep working and pushing that edge right up to where you called it quits, either because the physical body died and you disincarnated, or at some point in life you repressed and said, this is too much, I'm not going any further, and you stopped developing. The conscience is the voice of the soul informing us at every key moment of life, I mean, every moment, but particularly at the big challenges of what action needs to be taken to fulfill our life curriculum now, because it has the memory of all that. It's the conscience is telling, it's the guiding light from within saying, this is the action that's true to you so you can flourish and grow and develop. This is where you called it quits before. And you come to a point in life of a great challenge and you go, oh my God, I can't believe that I got here again, that I'm doing this again. And not because you remember it from a last life, but you know, we've all had the experience of being in hell in this life because we swore we'd never do it again. And yet here we are losing our best friend or losing a relationship or drunk in the gutter, whatever it is, right? Whatever it is. And life is asking for a response, and we know that we have to respond, and we just rather cut off our arm than do what we've always done because we know where that leads to. And the soul is the part that's saying, well, the easiest thing would be to take that drink or sleep with that person or steal that money or quit the program or file for divorce or get married again or have another kid, or that would be the easiest thing. And the soul's the part that's saying, but here's the thing, that if you do this, this is medicine. This is what is needed to meet your life curriculum. And the authentic self is the part that says, fuck yeah.
Mhm.
And the superego is the part that says, yeah, but if you're a good Jew or a good Buddhist or a good Muslim or a good boy or a good girl, you have to do this, regardless of what the soul's saying. And the ego's just the force to maintain the status quo and do what's ever easiest. How does all that sound?
That sounds fantastic.
Does
Yeah,
it make it more clear?
it does. Yeah, and it aligns with what I was thinking with it. I had a sense of the soul as traveling sort of horizontally, traveling through time in that biographical sense,
Well, I
and the
no, I
authentic self as vertical, like right now, that it's
no,
an
I think the
eternity.
soul rises vertically as so when you're seeing you did you see I'm sure many of you have seen the movie Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Million years ago.
You
Yeah.
saw it, Griffin?
Yeah, I
Do you
barely remember
remember
it.
do you remember the scene where the martial artists were fighting and they were walking on top of 40-foot tall bamboo plants?
Yeah,
Like they were flying, they were
yeah.
walking on top. That is a Chinese physiological metaphor. So in the for having a light body, as in not weighing much. Now, if you look at the Sheneng Bonsao, many of the herbs in the highest category of herbs are said to make the body light. And making the body, when you're dreaming, you can fly in your dreams. That's your soul traveling because it's free of the body. Yes, that's the Hun traveling
Hmm.
because it's free of the body because the body's gone to sleep, but the soul can travel. Well, in the same way as we resolve karma, the soul elevates, and that the journey is vertical, that the chakras, for instance, are knots. The chakras can be conceived of as knots. And when we talk about the soul being a record, so when you come into this lifetime, you move relatively quickly through the knots you've already untied. So that that fire can push at higher and higher levels, and the soul elevates and becomes increasingly more luminous till it fuses with clear white light, and then you're set in the traditions to have a rainbow body.
Hmm.
You got to learn all this dharma.
I'm working on it.
Yeah. Okay, good. Any other
Thank you.
question or you're good?
I'm good.
Okay. Hi, Suzanne.
Hi. So when I listened to the recording and it moved me deeply, and to me, when I feel like I'm connecting with my soul, and then I feel really light. What you talked about just now, I feel light. I feel easy. I feel like I'm flowing. I'm part of the web. I'm just a particle, and we're all together in this. And I feel yeah, I have this lightness and this ease, and like you mentioned, I mean, for me, it's listening to John Coltrane, or to seeing a beautiful picture, and it's easy. So I don't really, yeah. So when you mentioned about I'm not going to have a drink anymore, I don't, to me, that's not so much my soul. When I feel my soul, I feel it more, it's easy, it's light, and effortless.
Well, that's there's that aspect to of it, but one can also feel an infinite depth that sort of rivets one, a
Mhm.
gravitas. So if you think about this, like there are guitarists, there are 12-year-olds on YouTube now who can play 64th notes for 3 minutes
Right.
on electric guitar, but there's no soul.
Correct.
But if you think of B.B. King just hitting one note, or
Hmm.
Stevie Ray Vaughan just
Hmm.
one note, boom,
Hmm.
there's a heaviness there.
Yeah.
And not a heavy in a negative egoic sort, but you open up to this amazing depth where everything goes just woomph.
Hmm.
And that's not really like a lightness. There's a gravitas. And there's a can be with the soul, a gravitas in the moment, realizing, oh my God, I'm in the face of this challenge and I'm contemplating what to do, and my ego wants to do this, and that's the quick, dirty solution, and I know where it will lead,
Mhm.
which will be to me creating karma and suffering for myself and others.
Mhm.
But this message is coming from my depth, speaking to me, and it's asking me to do something which is inconceivable
Mhm.
to the ego
Mhm.
because it fundamentally threatens
Mhm.
relationships in life that are profoundly dysfunctional but reinforce the status quo, that one's ego is deeply invested in. And that is not a free, easy flowing feeling. That is a sense of like right here, right now, this moment is
Mhm.
destiny.
Mhm.
It's a turning point in all my incarnations that maybe I backed away from the last 2,000 times. And
Mhm.
what am I, Suzanne, gonna do
Mhm.
right here, right now? And there's a gravitas and a depth to that, which to all those things, which is just more than a sense of lightness and flowing.
Mhm. And this class, actually, ever since this class, there's many things I haven't backed away from, which I have until now.
Mhm.
So I'm really,
You've been
really,
working. I mean, I haven't known you long, but as long as I've known you, you've been working very hard and very sincerely. So it no doubt you're reaping the fruits of all your sincerity and your concern and interest in development.
and there is no stopping because the beauty is so, I can feel the beauty, and also how I can feel it in my stomach, and that's where when you said, you don't, it's not all feeling good, but you're like, okay, I'm at this point, and the beauty now is to go further, to stop this.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, another example here would be the alcoholic at rock bottom or the compulsive gambler, the person who arrives at a point in life where they've torn apart everything and everyone they loved, like Frankenstein's monster. And they're sitting there and and there's a moment and they realize, I have a choice right now.
Yeah.
I could die or I
Mhm.
could kill, or everything could turn 365 degrees. It's in my hands, and I have that choice.
It and there's such beauty in that. So
Well, it's profoundly beautiful. It's
mhm.
profoundly humbling.
Mhm.
It's grace, and we never want to take that for granted.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
we want to be profoundly humble in the face of the realization of that opportunity, because so many times do we squander the most precious moments
Exactly.
and opportunities.
And being humble and being like feeling I'm on my soul journey, I'm not alone. It, like you said, it's lifetimes. I feel like lifetimes are, you know, flowing off of me. So,
Yes, and I had said that the soul was the most subtle part of ourselves that still retains a personal dimension.
mhm.
But the soul isn't purely personal, it's the interface to clear white light. So
Yeah,
it has a personal dimension, but there is a world soul, and even I mean, if you just feel into the infinity of it, there is a universal soul.
yeah.
And if there are 10 trillion multiverses, that has one soul too.
Hmm. That's right. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful. Hello, Colin.
Hi, Lonnie,
Hey,
everybody. Um, so I have two things.
I'm going to be in Denver Thursday morning. Oh, I
Welcome.
told you this because we talked the other day.
I'll slap you a high five in the astral.
I'm imagining I'm seeing mountains behind you out the window, but I can't really tell.
That is in fact true. Yes.
Yeah, it's beautiful. He lives in Telluride, so
Yeah. It's a very nice part of the world.
yeah, I can't wait. So what's up?
Um, well, so I've got two things. The first is when you were talking about perceiving a work of art and our sense of its authenticity or maybe the intentions behind the artist or the struggle.
Hmm.
I thought of that line from Van the Man, turn up the radio so I can hear if it's got soul.
Hmm.
And I'm curious about the relationship between struggle and the place from which struggle comes, struggle with ourselves in growth.
Hmm.
Um, and so here's the question I'd written down at some point somewhere in a journal, all struggle is the ego. And sometimes I think there's truth in that at one level.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't think it's true, but go on.
well, so when you were talking about, life asks for a response and the soul says, do this, it's medicine, and that often it represents a struggle. And, you know, the question is that I was reading recently this study that was done on whether or not we can perceive the difference between AI generated art and something human made. And there were like 3,000 people tested, and they couldn't tell the difference like 97% of the time. And then when
Depends
they,
what I would think it would depend what kind of art, but we need to
yeah,
do.
it was like paintings, I think.
Well, if it's paintings and line drawings, it's hard to tell, but with photographs, I can tell every time.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Yeah. Well, so then they presented the same images, but they labeled the ones that were AI made, and the value dropped by 60 some odd percent.
hmm,
And so what it suggests is that the value is not in the image, but in the struggle and the artist's struggle to create it,
yeah.
or in the words, the struggle for somebody to express something and what they're engaged in. And so I'm curious about this question of the role of the soul and the conscience or intuition in this process of struggling with oneself, um, to evolve or to grow. And if you could just say a bit more about that, because I think so often we don't suffer intentionally, but we suffer, And so I'm
Well,
curious about the role of the soul and listening to that conscience in that process.
well, there's just sure, it's a great question. There's an inner and outer dimension of everything. So in my teaching, I talk about, you know, the outer dimension of shame and the inner dimension. What healthy shame is, the outer dimension of pride, which is vicious and hurts people, and having healthy pride. And we can just look at the inner and outer dimensions of struggle. And the ego struggle is always purely personal, and it always has to do with pursuing desires and avoiding fears in an inherently limited and selfish context. It's just that simple. But there is this kind of mythic archetype that, like, if you cultivate enough Tao, you flow like a river and everything's going to be easy. Everything's going to be easy, and you're going to be graceful, and you're going to be effortless, and you're going to do without doing, and everything's going to be perfect. And it's sort of tied to the other myth that, like, if you get enlightened, I could hacksaw your legs off and you wouldn't blink and you'd feel no pain. I could murder your children in front of you and you'd love me unconditionally. You see, it's related to the same kind of sort of mythic, magical notion. I wouldn't say, for instance, that defeating Hitler in the 1940s, which I think we could all agree was a struggle, was an act of ego. And I wouldn't say that Elie Wiesel, having lived through the concentration camps and given his whole life, or Martin Luther King, certainly his life was would we could say was a struggle. I wouldn't say these were acts of ego. We have plenty of examples, and I'm sure we can all think in our own life of tremendous struggles we've had that the authentic ego generally tells us the easiest thing to do which sows the worst karmic consequences. The which is because it's do whatever I need to do right now to avoid this fear or fulfill this desire, regardless of the consequence to myself and other. That's the ego. The When we talk about struggling in relationship to that, it's because we're divided and we have some comprehension of the ego's imperative, which is instilled in the body as neural networks and muscular tightnesses and all kinds of psychic and cognitive and physical and physiological loops compelling us to just repeat history. And we experience the force of that on the one hand, relative to perhaps the slight whisper of conscience saying, but here's the right thing to do. And then if we hear that and we let it in, then we're stuck between these two things. And when most people talk about struggling, they're like, well, the soul wants this and ego wants that, and it's all so complicated. And I don't know. The last couple times I acted for soul. So, every voice is equal. So now we'll do what ego wants for a while. You know, I didn't, I haven't had a drink in 2 weeks, so now I can have a couple of drinks. That kind of thing, right? So really, I think it's the soul and spirit that has to struggle in the face of a universe of opposition. And just look at the consequences that philosophers and artists and spiritual figures and political leaders have had to pay for following the dictates of their conscience. Look at the consequences many of us have had to pay for following the dictates of our deepest conscience and our most profound knowing. And I think it would be fair to describe it as struggle. What do you think, Colin? Anything else or?
Yeah, that's a lot to chew on. I think that what arises as you're talking is this sense that oftentimes the voice of the conscience or the soul in this context, um,
Well, the conscience, as I teach, is the voice of the soul.
yeah, it seems that often, we're divided internally, or there's this
We're
kind of
always divided
yeah,
internally.
this plurality of selves that's trying to persuade us in different directions, and
Yes.
that you had said in the last class, the witness, if you look back through your life, always knows. Like we
Yeah.
always know what decision is in service to our growth and evolution.
Mhm.
And the forces that work against it often feel so monumental. And I think that that's
Well, they are monumental because they're not personal. They're actually of infinite proportion. So you've got all the habits from this incarnation and all your beliefs and all your conditioning, but the soul dimension says that it goes back to the Big Bang. I mean, it took like 15 billion years pushing its way through matter just so we could have this conversation. And you're talking to me about the resistance seems monumental. I mean, 15 billion years to have this conversation, to even consider these things.
Mhm.
And also before when I had spoken, your response was it's a lot to chew on. And I would just offer to you, like, for the sake of the teaching example here, that chewing on it could be a way of avoiding the whole thing. And to get in touch with sort of the authentic selves and the soul response, you just look in without having to go any further and digest any of what Lonnie just said. Do I know it's true? Do I have to think about it to know if it's all true? Or did something land? It's like if we're sitting there and we're listening to John Coltrane and we leave the show and I say, Colin, what did you think? You go, I don't know. It's a lot to chew on. I'll get back to you next month. But man, it all just happened. What do you think? I don't know. It's a lot to chew on. So there is a capacity that we have to just know. And it's tricky business because the ego will co-opt it and dress itself up in drag to make us think that it is it. But there's a and no denigration here at drag at all. It just seemed like a compelling kind of metaphor. The there is a capacity to just know. Sometimes we got to chew on things, subject them to scrutiny, but sometimes it's just avoidance. Sometimes the note just lands. Okay? And you generally can know when it lands, not just on the one, there are two signs. On the one hand, there's just a yes. And on the other hand, the ego's screaming, no. Okay, Cliff, hi. You're got on mute as
There we go. Can you hear me?
yes, sir.
Yeah. Oh, good. Lonnie, the wonderful thing about this module for me is the clarification of language of the soul. So I was sort of aware of this, but it's really helped to clarify this for me. So what I mean is when I turn to soul, what I don't look for is like a dot point email of response. What comes through, the greater the sincerity we turn towards soul, it comes through as images, as vision, as knowing, gnosis, I think. But the really interesting thing for me is that it's translated into real change in what I'm doing with my music, with my guitar playing, but also a whole series of poems has come through now. So that made me realize that the language of soul isn't directly words, but it has to be transduced down through the mind in order to share, as we're doing right now.
Well, I
And
think the
so,
soul speaks to us in poetry and in metaphor.
yeah. Can I read you a short poem that came through
Sure, of
as a
course.
result of this?
Yeah.
It's called "It's Hard to Be Sane When the World is Aflame," in brackets, a plea to wake up. It's hard to be sane when the world is aflame, when clowns are in power and their antics turn sour, when goons in suits tell us how it should be, that the whole world should be full of people like me, when truth is no more than a personal whim, when right and wrong are the playthings of fools, when dissension is silenced with violence's tools. It's hard to be sane when the world is aflame. I demanded to know of the depths of my soul, why peace is such a distant dream? Why can't it rule forever true? Why can't it be here now in the bold light of day? From the depths came an answer that was crystal clear. Peace begins and ends in a heart that is pure. Looking outside, it can never be found. We must deeply understand that we are ego bound, that peace dawns when me and mine end, that love alone opens peace's doors, love alone and nothing more. It's easy to be sane when the heart is aflame.
Good. I enjoy that. That's beautiful.
I think that's a direct, it's a direct response of getting clarity about language of soul. It doesn't it doesn't come through as these words I've just said. It comes through as feeling, as knowing, as something, and then the role of mind is to sort of transduce that down into words so I can share it, so it can be given out, sort of thing. It's
Yes. Yes, I think yeah, I mean, in the face of the cataclysm we're in at this time of history, you know, it's easy to feel powerless.
Mm.
It's easy to feel powerless. But I am really doubtless that we have access to the interior dimension, and that
Yes.
and that we're working, we can work directly with forces, impersonal forces of infinite proportion
Mm.
to affect
Mm.
change. And this is beyond just prayer. It's more active than prayer, at least more active than mythic prayer, where we're hoping something out there will take care of it.
Mm.
It's
Mm.
actually in
Mm.
working with the interior of the self, the way we have the opportunity to in this class and in the discussion groups and through the contemplations, and then applying all this material moment by moment throughout the day and
Mm.
life. We really do have an opportunity to make a difference. And nothing I said here obviates the need for political action and social discourse. This is social discourse we're having now.
Mm.
It is political action. But one of the downsides of contemplative practices throughout history has been the idea of leaving the world to do this work. And I think we
Mm.
very much have to do this work in the interior of the self and bring it into the world and
Mm.
manifest that politically. And the only way we're going to overcome this is for us all to come together in a powerful political movement that's based in our true awakening of the heart and the soul. The
Mm.
Democratic Party, which has been the vehicle for the expansion of consciousness in the 20th century, in the 20th century, became conservative and really invested in preserving power structures and really dysfunctional, and has not moved much beyond early 1970s in worldview. And that is now 55 years. That is really square, man. That's no, in the 60s, we would have said that's like Nowheresville.
Yes.
So anyway,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing the poem with us.
You're welcome. It just becomes, in what you're saying, Lonnie, too, it's just become ever clearer to me that the worse it gets, like it's got worse in the last week, what's going on out there, the worse it gets, the deeper and the more committed and the more resolute I must become in the inner depth, which I must keep going down to in order to manifest and do what I can do politically, socially, whatever. It's a direct relationship. The worse it gets, the deeper we must go, isn't it? Really?
Yes, and it's going to get a lot worse for a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
When
Thank you, Lonnie. Thank
when
you.
when AI takes most of the lower level jobs and intermediate level jobs and even some higher jobs in culture, when who's going to decide who gets to eat?
Mm, mm.
Anyway, Sarah J, hi.
Hey, first of all, like, wow, everybody, thank you so much for everything that's been brought up tonight. It's such a rich discussion and really moving. And I've had some what I call deep soul experiences, and one of them is like a moment when I was 16 with no experience in meditation or anything. A, a very dark period in my life. What I would say is soul, like time kind of stopped for me and something came through, which I guess we would call conscience, and told me to ask for help. And I asked for help, and my life went on a different course. And every time an inkling of that has resonated, I've geared toward that. And that's part of what drew me to studying with you is it was like find someone is speaking this language that I don't really know how to talk about, or maybe a meditation circles and this and that. So I wanted to talk about like if you notice or you equate like how in my experience like time has stood still in a way in soul space, and there's been a visceral density change, and the best I can describe this is um like it feels like all when I'm connecting at soul, listening from soul, experiencing a soul leaving a body, that it feels like I'm in a viscous like density, like as if standing in water or something is the best I can describe that. And I wonder if you have had that experience, or if that resonates with you or anybody else.
Well, one, so, in the West, we have this sort of, because the traditions are monotheistic, one God, one devil, one soul. And we just have this word soul. But of course, in the East, everything's sort of differentiated by element or by the number eight or by the number five, right? So when we talk about soul, we talk about the Po and we talk about the Hun and we talk about the Ling. Well, the Ling is the luminous spirit, and it is the highest emanation of Jing, which is water. So the Ling, when we open up to that luminosity of Ling, which is the luminosity of the moon and its power to turn the tides invisibly, just through its own depth and gravitas. When we open up to that dimension of the soul, there is a sense of an infinite depth, and it leads to the profound depth of water.
Mm.
Whereas, of course, the Hun is the part that journeys at night and can fly, and that's much, or zoom into something close and then zoom way. Like I remember dreams where I was hovering above an island, and then all of a sudden I was standing on the beach, just like Jodie Foster in the movie Contact, right? So that's more the Hun can do that. And the Po is more the experience, like death experience and like the death kind of journey. I think like in ayahuasca, for instance. And Po can also be flying, like the lungs just inspired. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Eric.
Hi, Bonnie.
Hi.
Um, so my question today is regarding state stabilization with stage development.
State,
Um,
but you just went a little fast.
sorry.
State stabilization.
Yes. So the stabilization of state awareness
Yes.
as one develops in stage development, so vertically.
Okay.
Um, and this question comes about thinking about sorry, I need to preference. I'm going to jump around a little bit.
Okay, we got time.
Okay, cool. So I don't know if it was in the reading or in your video, but there was a story you told about how a person can experience a calling um, to resolve all their karma, like to resolve the family line
Yeah.
um, of sort of dysfunction, if you will, and I definitely went through that at one point in my life as a very conscious and it actually is what led me to acupuncture in the first place was being in a place of incredible suffering with myself and making a conscious choice not only to resolve what I was going through, but look at the influences and sort of go back through my ancestral line to sort of figure it all out and did that for years.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's the backstory. Um, and I really like this idea of an ongoing conversation, like the picture of an ongoing conversation of the various aspects of self. And it comes up in the reading and it comes up in a few of the questions and the discussion this evening that oftentimes that discussion or that conversation between the various parts is in conflict. And I guess what I'm wondering is the more I go on this journey, the less conflict there is between those voices.
Yeah. Well, that's
And
that's right.
uh, yeah, so I guess I'm wondering is that
And you're also probably experience far less triggers.
yeah, much less. Okay. So yeah, I guess what I was wondering is that in and of itself an example of the concept of state stabilization then?
I think it would be an example, yes. I mean, that can mean several things,
Hmm.
right? I mean, so in other words, at any stage, so because all of the states are available to all of the stages,
Yeah. Yeah.
any stage can stabilize relationship to a state
Through its worldview, perceived
through
through its
its own worldview. So you could have an Aztec priest with a deeply stable relationship to the soul, but he's still carving the virgin's heart out and eating it
right, yeah.
and
Yeah,
putting
yeah.
heads on stakes.
Because it's expressed through a different worldview and a different value system. I understand
The
that.
higher one goes in, as one gets into the higher stages, the, the second tier stages, holistic and integral,
Hmm.
which offer the top-down view of history and the top-down view of the self.
Yeah.
And particularly as one has self-actualized one's ego and then is transcending it into the transpersonal realm, as one goes higher beyond integral into the transpersonal stages, state and stage start to become increasingly more confluent with each other. State development and stage development. And what you're experiencing of being less triggered and also of the different parts of the self being in less contention with each other
Hmm.
is the typical sign of the unification of the self that one would predict.
Okay.
I mean, it is the outcome of the model till we get to a point where there is just one self.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I experience very little conflict between the voices in my head anymore.
And I noticed that about you is um I can sometimes see the various aspects, but there doesn't seem to be like there's no argument or dysfunction. It's just a different voice.
Well, yes, and because everything is being held with in care and love. It doesn't mean that I don't get impulse like fuck you impulses.
I
It doesn't,
understand.
right? If someone cuts me off or this, that, or the other thing, it doesn't mean I don't get the impulse. It's just that it doesn't trigger me and I'm just not interested. I'm not interested in a way that my interest would inflate something to cause it to usurp a lot of attention and then lead to action and create complexity.
Understood. Yeah, you see it for what it is in that moment, and almost with an appreciation and love.
Yeah, and there
Yeah.
and yeah, like okay, there you are, and there and also, as you develop just the the parts of ourselves that we're protecting don't need to perform that function anymore.
Yeah.
And that happened in an instant. I mean, I talk about when I had this insight in meditation and Jesus, 2001, 25 years ago. I walked out and closed my martial arts school.
Right.
Like I literally made a call and said, we're done with classes after 17 years. I just realized the rest of my life I don't need to protect it. There's nothing, I don't need to protect myself in the way I was thinking I needed to.
Mhm.
And that's also when it took a few more years, but I stopped using my intellect to protect myself and got to a point where I didn't have to know anymore.
Sobriety was very much like that for me, where I got to a point where I didn't need to medicate anything anymore. It was just,
Yeah.
yeah, felt like there was nothing to hide or nothing to, nothing to change. It was just, yeah, didn't hurt anymore.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thank you.
Hello, Danielle.
Hello, Lonnie. I was wondering what the interface is between the soul and the other dimensions, like the conscious, unconscious, emptiness, and luminosity. How the soul interfaces with those things.
Well, yeah. Well, as I said, the soul is the vehicle for the gross dimensions of the self, the physical body and the gross mind, to be able to interact with luminosity, clear white light. I said clear white light, which is consciousness, which is spirit, which is eros, the creative impulse, however you want to look at it. The soul is the vehicle for the gross aspects of self to interact with the very, very subtle dimensions of the self.
Okay.
So the soul is luminous,
Mhm.
which you can experience, for instance, in meditation. When you drop the contents of the mind, there's infinite darkness and infinite light, infinite emptiness. Emptiness means there's no content, but it is luminous. Empty means empty of content. No thought, no feeling, no emotion, no sensation. It's empty, but it's bright.
Can the soul also encompass like emptiness?
Yeah, yes, the soul emerges from it. Well, as I said, the ling, which is the soul that goes from lifetime to lifetime, is luminous, but it is the highest dimension of Jing, which is the depth of water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the soul, has an oceanic depth to it. Well,
Yeah.
I talked about how in that moment of the soul coming into focus where it wasn't abstract anymore and I had a lived experience, I felt like a, I felt like the floor opened up beneath me and there was like infinite depth, like the Grand Canyon.
Would you say then that there's not a dimension to the soul that is unconscious? Like it's just,
Oh no, I'd say I mostly experience the soul through the unconscious. I mean, I have no conscious or very, very little consciousness regarding what happened in any of my previous, if I had previous lifetimes. I have no access to that information. The soul reveals itself as it rises and as I rise to meet deeper and deeper and deeper challenges in life. Like I'm 67. We just bought a new puppy. On average, it'll live 13 years. I'll be 80 when that puppy passes. It brings up mortality. So as I'm dealing with this area of life, as I've moved out of like middle age into starting to be elderly, it brings up mortality. And as I look at that and I start to deal with that, unconscious dimensions of the soul is the continual, reveals itself through the continual revelation of greater depth in relationship to what we're encountering in life. So much of the soul is unconscious. Most of the soul is unconscious to us because it just has an infinite depth.
okay, yeah, that's
And also, Danielle, because even though the soul has a personal dimension, it isn't purely personal. So that as we open to it, we realize we've played all roles. We've been men, we've been women, we've been gay, we've been straight, we've been Muslim, we've been Christian, we've been abused, we've been the abuser, we've cheated, we've been the cheater. We played all roles, and we open up to an impersonal depth, which we really have to strive in great openness and humility and great care and deep listening to begin to articulate to ourselves in a way that it reveals itself to us.
yeah, I can see how that's related to the forgiveness piece and the care. And it is something to really continuously strive for. I appreciated you just talking about like the more mundane example of like if someone cuts you off, because it's just so human and real, and that part exists, and I see it in myself, and sometimes it's jarring, and I think I just strive to take these teachings very seriously, and sometimes it's almost too serious, and I'm like,
Well, it's probably not by too serious, you might mean that you're just not being kind to yourself.
yeah, maybe. Well,
But you couldn't take them too seriously in the right way
okay.
because nothing matters. It's not that this particular teaching I'm giving is the be all and end all and matters more than any other teaching. It's just that this kind of inquiry and the kind of questions we're dealing with in any tradition are the most compelling work for any of us to be doing.
I agree. And before meditating in the morning, I'll read the Bodhisattva vow out loud. And I
Mhm.
have experience with it where sometimes I'm like out of breath, like reading it. And I'm like, it feels energetic. Like, am I living up to this? Is,
No, no, you're probably not.
yeah, well,
It,
yeah,
it,
no, I'm not.
it, apparently, if you were even at the first tier, you'd know everybody's past lives and where you had met all of us before. So unless that's happening,
Well, okay,
I,
yeah. So
I
it's,
I remember looking at a friend once. I had a friend who led ayahuasca ceremonies, and she was the one I did the four with that I had done. And I remember saying, just being so deeply moved and saying, boy, I'm just nowhere near a bodhisattva. And she looked at me and kind of laughed and said, well, it takes lifetimes. And I realized that just how arrogant the ego is this is something to strive for humbly and just let in. And to point, it is so absolute that what it does is in the sincere contemplation of it, it always points out the gap between who we are and what we're striving toward.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, so it's not a problem that you're not living up to it. I mean, the point is the human face of perfection is striving to live up to the absolute. It's only myth that anyone ever does it. My last teacher was absolutely convinced he was the living incarnation of the absolute and created a lot of karma.
So just to wrap up, the soul is deeply connected to the unconscious and also brings forth consciousness.
By speaking to us through conscience. The soul reveals itself to us through conscience.
Well, yes. And the difference between conscience and consciousness.
Yeah.
Unconscious and versus.
Well, I mean, I am conscious of being a soul. But that is an ongoing, I have a stabilized relationship to soul as a state experience. So it's always present for me, or at least almost always present. But there's an infinite depth to which the soul could be present within me. And I'll assume for humility's sake that I'm at the tip of the iceberg and that it has lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes of depth to reveal itself to me.
Thanks, Lonnie.
Thank you, Danielle. Beautiful to see you. Hi, Tara.
Hi, Lonnie.
Hey,
How are you?
good to see you.
I have a two-part question. One is somewhat in line, and one is something that came up to me as I was contemplating all of this.
Mhm.
So my first one goes along when you're speaking of the ling being the highest part of the soul. How does
Well,
that
I
equate to
said
gnosis?
that Ling is the most subtle emanation of Jing.
That carries lifetime to lifetime to lifetime.
Yes, either the Ling does, or sometimes you see the phrase Hunling, where they put the Hun and the Ling together.
Yes. How does that relate to gnosis? Like the knowing, the knowing of I know through experience.
Well, you need to say more. I mean, so I talked about, for instance, the knowing. So I talked about like BB King hits a note.
That leads into my next
And
question. Yeah.
and then I talked to Colin about I said some stuff and he said, well, I really need to chew on it, which is his stomach saying I need to digest it, which can be, I wasn't saying it was for him, but it can be the thought capacity of the ego and the mind avoiding grappling with a depth which is already recognized and known to be true. It can be just a way of taking more time.
Okay.
So when we attune our ear to the soul, and the soul speaks to us through conscience, I'm saying that the soul is the part that knows our life curriculum and is speaking to us to action to take. And the soul is, because the soul is the subtlest part of the self that's still personal nature. It's the dimension of ourself which is interfacing with clear white light and has the capacity to recognize truth prior to thought.
So I think I'm asking, is there a differentiation between gnosis and how you're defining it, or are they the same or similar?
No, I think the way you used it, the just knowing, is what I'm talking about here. It's just that again, the ego can convince us that it's the soul. It can do the ego can convince us I have to do this thing. It's the next step. It's really right for me, and it can be a terrible thing. So there is a part of ourself that never lies, but the ego knows how to pretend to be it.
Yes. Okay, question number 2. This happened after I listened to the lecture and I was driving for about 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I have a question about the soul in music or vibration or frequency, whatever word you want to interchange there.
Mhm.
There's times that silence, I would use the term fills my soul. And
Yes.
there's times like the reference you keep making, a note just drops, and I swear it hits right on my soul and it nourishes my soul. And
Yes.
I wanted to hear you speak to the relationship of music and the soul.
Well, I just think everything's vibration. And the soul vibration is a deep, deep, deep vibration. So if you think of an orchestra, those deep notes are moving the soul, but those high violin notes on top that are just floating over it, those are celestial spirits.
Okay. All right. And silence, the same way? How
Well,
does silence work with the
if
soul
you
frequency wise?
listen to Jimi Hendrix, his tune Machine Gun,
Mm-hmm.
that's the soul. But if you listen to Access Bold as Love, that's spirit. Those two
Okay.
things. If you listen to
Yeah.
Coltrane, the tune Equinox,
Yeah.
that's soul.
Okay.
I mean, and I mean I think all this is a conversation. I don't have it nailed down, but I experience soul as like the deep, the bass, the deep, the ocean tides. And spirit are those light violins.
So are you familiar with classical music? So like Mozart's
Oh,
Moonlight Sonata to me is highly soulful.
I was thinking of Mozart when I talked about those violins coming in over the top. Like there are these deep notes, and then all of a sudden up top you just
Yeah.
hear this like sonorous, and that's like
Mhm.
spirit. The higher frequency is spirit.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Hello, on.
Claudia.
On
Hello.
On just came on the retreat. We did the retreat together last week, and she's like the best meditator I've ever known. She
So
made, I was like almost embarrassed to sit with her 6 hours a day because she was doing like 9 and 10. I would sit an hour and then do Qigong for 20 minutes.
okay, you're embarrassing me now.
And then I'd sit an hour and do Qigong for 20 minutes. And she would just sit through the whole thing for like 3 hours straight and she wouldn't blink an eye.
Yeah.
Very impressive. Anyway, what's up?
So I watched the movie Train Dreams.
Train Dreams, what do you think?
Yeah, I felt like my soul was totally naked at the end of it. I was just crying.
It's a deeply beautiful movie.
Yeah, if you want to feel your soul, just watch the movie. And so I just cried and sobbed for another 30 minutes after the movie ended.
Yes.
And just made me realize how like humanity is such like in the search like of meaning and making sense. And just when at the end of the movie when he's in the plane and he's like upside down.
Yeah, you can't give it away though.
Oh yeah, okay. Sorry. But so to lose sense and to connect and to connect to the soul of the world, actually. And that's what really make everything integrated from our meditation together and my journey in Peru, like how my soul and the soul of the world are one.
Yes. Yes, and that, I mean, in my experience, when that happened with me, it was just truly heartbreaking.
Yeah, and I would just cry and cry and cry. It's like this, as you said, there is this tiny personal thing in the soul. You just drop also that, and it's just like this openness, and just it's at once super sad and super joyful at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that was my experience too of the movie.
Oh, it's good to see you.
Yes, it's good to see all of you and you too.
Hello, dear.
Hey, Lonnie.
Hi.
So life is going really well.
Well, for some of us.
For some
Good.
of us.
Good.
For my small little life compared to the cosmos, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, I really feel that with the help of you in this course, like, and then all of these gigantic life changes I've had in the last year, I feel like my life path is the clearest it's been, and my practice has really shifted a lot, that I feel like I'm meeting people in a much deeper way.
Mm-hmm.
And just moving from a foundation of love in my life. And at the same time, I notice all of this like transformation in my life. And then at the same time, you were talking about closing the gap between the soul and like where we want to be, just that growth gap. And especially I notice with triggers that like I'm aware of them and I'm not acting out of them, but there's that impulse still there, that and it's visceral sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And also meditation continues to be like extremely difficult, even though I'm meditating every day.
How do you know it's difficult?
Well, I know you said in previous calls that just all the thoughts going a million miles an hour, as long as you don't have a relationship with it, then that's fine. But
But you're
that's,
having a relationship because you're describing it as difficult.
yeah.
So that's a very specific relationship. You're drawing the conclusion because you're having a lot of thoughts going a million miles an hour that you're not having good meditations and that there's a problem. Because, and that if you didn't have thoughts, disturbing thoughts, and if everything slowed down, then your meditation would be good.
Well, I guess I was putting pressure on myself that the thoughts would be less busy. There's
I
just
don't,
like a big,
I don't know. I just sat 6 hours. I've been meditating since 1972. And I just generally have a lot of thoughts. Sometimes they're in the forefront and they're going on and on and on. And sometimes they're way in the background and sometimes they disappear. But sometimes my mind's pretty busy. And I looked at Anna, I said, you know, I have lots of thoughts, but I just let them go. And she goes, oh, I don't have that many thoughts.
yeah. I thank you for reminding me of that. I do notice though, despite all of the transformation that I've been experiencing in the last year,
Mhm.
there is quite some work to do in regards to self-compassion, in regards to closing that gap. And I
Yeah.
just wanted to know how, if you have suggestions on that in relationship with the soul.
Well, an example of self-compassion would be not drawing the conclusion that your meditations aren't going well because you have lots of thoughts. That's just you're being hard on yourself right there.
Yeah, and I see that translate in different parts of my life still.
Yeah, so this would involve shadow work
Hmm.
to get to the basis of which, we're not going to do here in the context of this class now, and we don't have the time, and it's sort of a process. But there are no doubt structures in place and beliefs in place mm, that were established early in life that need to be examined and need to be let go of and need to be reframed. And there are probably likely parts of yourself that are still protecting you because that came into being in early traumas that probably at this point could be let go of and free all the energy they're using to protect you up to just donate that energy to the general pool of health and well-being.
I am aware of the shadows, and I'm sure there's more to be aware of on deeper levels.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so you want to hold all that in compassion, and you want to meet the parts of the self that are the protectors and firefighters. Protectors are just repressing. The firefighters burn the house down whenever you get triggered
Hmm.
to drive others away or to make some big effing problem, to do anything but keep you vulnerable or open or interested. And so you would want to meet those parts and get clear on them and what functions they're serving and integrate them back into the self so they can relax. But that takes work and looking at each looking at the different parts and having conversations and contemplating them. If you write me, I can send you the name of someone who can do that work with you.
I have been working with someone in regards to that for the last 2 years.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, it must be helping somewhat because you've made such big changes.
It is. I
So
think
if
it's a little.
you're working with me and taking my classes and you've made these changes and things are going well, and you're working with this person, which all comes down to, so what's the problem? You talked
The
about
problem is, I guess I had this
not
expectation
not
that I
being
would
that you'd be what?
that the gap would be like a millimeter shorter at least.
But this is an example of you right here, right now, in real time, being really judgmental and hard on yourself. Didn't you leave a religious cult?
Yeah,
Didn't you leave a marriage that wasn't good?
yeah,
Didn't you give up an acupuncture practice, which was good, to move across the country and follow your heart into a whole new thing?
yeah,
Are you a millimeter closer? Does all that qualify as a millimeter?
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just nothing's changed. That's just the superego and the ego denying. See, it keeps telling you nothing's changed. You're no closer. Everything's the same. And how do you know? Because my thoughts are busy during meditation. You just got to give all that up and let yourself be happy and give yourself some credit and realize how far you've come and that you're going to be going forever. And there's always going to be another lifetime and lifetime to do it and to go. And stop being so hard on yourself.
Okay.
I mean, the only time you can apply compassion is now.
Yeah. Very true.
Yeah, you're doing great. Aren't
Thank
you?
you. I am, and my practice is like going really well very soon.
Just
So,
that's in like a month.
yeah, I've only been practicing for
No,
maybe,
but I mean, since you last talked to me. In the last
yeah,
class, you were talking to me and saying how nervous you were about whether it would do okay. So can we conclude you're a few millimeters closer?
yes, sir.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you, Bjorn.
Thank you.
Hello, Hasso. Hi.
Hey, Lonnie. Hey, well, this has been a beautiful journey. Listening to your soul talk a few times. Wow. So, what I wanted to ask is, you know, I kind of sense, and I've actually, on the few medicine journeys that I've done, intentional medicine journeys, I've had these experiences too. And so my question is the sense of this kind of overcoming the sense of incompletion or so. So that it has something to do with that there's a sense that there's something more that needs to be done. And so I'm kind of trying to differentiate that in one way my soul might be saying that to me and reminding me to drop in deeper. On the other hand, I can also see that it's the voice of the superego, the endless self-critic. And so, and then during those medicine journeys, obviously, I'm always finding that there are parts of those medicine journeys that are useful, and some are also just projections. And,
Well, they're
and
trickster, right?
yes, trickster, exactly. So there's a trickster mechanism also that needs to be scrutinized and looked through. And so anyway, I just wanted to ask you in regards to, and also a little bit against this backdrop of what you said, that we're spending 70% of our time on repression. And then I'm just wondering, that seems like a high number. And
I think I might have said something like I had an insight that like 97% of our metabolic resources go to maintaining the myth of separation.
oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense, actually. That I can roll with much more.
I mean, I don't know the exact amount, Hasso, because obviously I don't have a machine that would tell me.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I think we spend a lot of energetic resources repressing. It takes a lot of work to hide material from consciousness.
Yes, yes. And that's exactly, it's not about the number. It's really more that I think just to contemplate about that, whatever the number is, that there's a high amount of repression, then obviously the question has to turn, the inquiry has to turn towards that repression, right? And there has to be, and then all that has to happen in a very gentle environment
Mm-hmm.
of inquiry, right?
Yes.
So that the soul can actually breathe and that we can actually expand into the present moment instead of just building more judgment on already too much whatever there is that the mind created in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so so what's your listening when you tune in on this what I just shared about the sense of incompletion? What are you
Well,
picking up there?
yeah. So because we're divided, we're very often, if not always, I would say always in relationship to the deepest choices, most profound choices, most critical choices, and the deepest existential issues, we're going to have a divided experience. The postmodern, the Eastern teachings and the Eastern Dharma came to the West significantly through postmodernism. And the postmodern view is one that deconstructs hierarchy. It values consensus. And it read the Eastern teachings and it interpreted them as upholding the idea of no hierarchy. And it reads things like Wu Wei. And it deeply, Wu Wei, the value of inaction or non-ado, go with the flow, just chill. There's nowhere to just be here now. Baba Ram Das wrote the book for postmodernism. Be here now. I want to be a human being, not a human doing. People ask me questions like, well, I mean, when you meditate and you don't move, doesn't it take work not to move? As if applying effort is a dirty word and everything should be easy. And if anything isn't easy, there's a problem. That's what Beer was just suggesting about meditation. For the postmodern mind, if something isn't easy, if it's a challenge, there's a problem. Because if I were really spiritually aligned, I'd sell lots of soap. And it could be effortless. It would be effortless. And this is a real postmodern, flat earth, flat world, no hierarchy, exert no effort. That form of consciousness gave us the civil rights movement, which is very beautiful, and it gave us Woodstock, which was beautiful. But as beautiful as it was 3 days of people laying in mud, having sex, and listening to music. And as great as the music was, and it was great, it's not going to solve any of the world's problems if all of us just take off our clothes, sleep with each other, lay in mud, and listen to music. The culture is calling for a lot more now, and that involves striving and pushing ourselves beyond our capacities and beyond our worldviews into deeper and more highly integrated states where we're able to respond to mind-blowing complexity. There's nobody alive with the capacity. There's no individual alive with the capacity to respond to the complexity that AI is bringing in. No one knows where the fuck this is going to be next Tuesday. No one knows. We've never seen anything like this. We've never seen anything like it. The best response I have to it is turn the shit off and wait another 200 years because we're nowhere near grown up. I mean, I like the fact that I can type in a sentence from the Nei Ching and say, describe to me the evolution of this thought over the next 22,000, the next 2,000 years of Chinese medical texts, and it'll show me how it changed from generation to generation. That's great. But the rest of it is where we're nowhere near grown up enough for nuclear bombs, biological warfare. Some of us aren't grown up enough, apparently, for Twitter accounts, let alone AI. So I mean, so anyway, I think there is lifetimes and eons and eons. I would, we can upgrade the Bodhisattva vow to, an eternal vow. We're coming back forever to do this. I can't envision an end to it. But that, I think, Hasso, the discernment for me would be the fact of incompletion doesn't mean there's a problem. It's the ego that makes it a problem. The authentic self says, let's go, baby. The authentic self is the part of us always working to close that gap.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. But as I said with Beer, and as I think with with Danielle, there's always going to be a gap.
Mhm.
There's always going to be a gap. Always. It's just in myth there isn't a gap.
It seems like the superego just hijacks that instantly and turns that into weaponry also against the soul.
Yes. Yeah,
So,
so the ego's point of view is, well, if it's forever, what's the fucking point?
mhm,
What's the point? That's the ego's point of view. What's the point? Just,
mhm,
and the postmodern ego view is, you know, just chill, man. Disinhibit all the liver yang, hallucinate and lay in a chair and just chill and watch it all arise and fall away. The it reads the Bhagavad Gita and says it's all just a play, just none of it's real.
mhm.
And if you
So
can
let,
never get there, what's the point?
so let me ask you one more question, which is more
Yeah.
personal. So we all had like guru experiences to some or another degree, and
Mhm.
when you were with your guru and your guru
I had
rolled out this,
three different ones.
yeah, but your last one rolled
Yeah,
out this super enlightenment program.
yeah.
What was your soul saying to that, and how did you respond? And what made you stay with that teacher?
Well, I drew a very strong boundary.
Hmm.
So I live right next door to the community by coincidence. I lived next door to the community. In fact, that community bought the property from the last community I'd been in, which was like an Advaita yoga ashram under an Indian Swami. And that had fallen apart because he had sex with five of the women after running a celibate teaching. And, on it goes. And so uh, I had a profound awakening with this teacher. His name was Andrew Cohen, and was really in love with the Dharma because it was the Dharma I had been studying my whole life already. All the I met Andrew in 2001 and I'd been studying Wilbur in 85. I mean, the first article I ever wrote in Chinese medicine was based on a book by Wilbur. And I was like, it was just an amazing community of amazing people. And we were bringing in leading thinkers from around the world every month to sit with and learn from directly. And my wife and I met with Andrew, and Andrew said, I'd make you formal students, but you have to come with no conditions. And I said, I'm never going to do that.
Mhm.
I'm never going to do that. And I paid a price in terms of because it was set up in this sort of mythic way where you're in or you're out. I was always kept on the outside, even though I lived here. So even though I was there 5 to 7 days a week and volunteered there 10 hours a week and edited all the audio and all that kind of thing and took part in almost all the teachings, I kept a real boundary. I lived 10 miles away and would not give up the agency because I had already had two teachers and learned enough to not do that. So I held a very strong line that way, which I think protected all my students who got involved too, because none of them gave up that agency. And my line was, I'm in the world and I'm living this, and I'm fulfilling my life's purpose, but I'm living the Dharma absolutely, striving to live it absolutely.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. I was
Okay.
just curious.
Yeah,
So
sure.
not just curious, I was actually sincerely interested. So that was helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, there are some people in Germany carrying on that work. They have a magazine. Um, I'll send you some information. You might be interested in them.
Yeah.
They're
I'm
really
not I'm not in Germany anyway.
No, but weren't you from Austria or
No, I am originally from Germany, yes.
from Germany? Yeah. So yeah, so I'll just let you know there are some very
Okay.
very it's Germany's interesting, right? Because there's a demographic in Germany which is still fascist, and then there's a demographic in Germany which is far more advanced than the average American.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
and in all of Northern Europe, in all of Northern Europe.
By the way, I met Andrew Cohen in Budgaya in 1991.
Oh, how
I
was that?
I just walked into him. I was just in Budgaya and I walked into some people who were just hanging out with Andrew Cohen.
Yeah,
So
I
it
would
was,
have known. I'm sure I know who they were.
yeah, so
Were they all on
so
fire?
yeah, it was still a small movement at that time.
Yes,
And I came across Punjaji, who was also a fallen teacher.
yes,
And so there are many fallen teachers, and I think in every fallen teacher there's a, a teaching, and if we can really take it to heart and work with it, and it's all good. Yeah.
yes. Good, beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you
Well,
so much.
yes, sir. So the next class is up, which is the module on spirit. We have 3 more classes. It's unbelievable how these things go. Really try to listen from, the goal in the discussion groups is to listen from a depth beyond what you've ever listened from before, and to just speak in real time, abstractly about what your experience is. So you can look into soul together and see if you can let go enough and be authentic enough that some real depth opens up for everybody. Um, I'm as part of the a la carte series courses, the next class I'm teaching is on exercise addiction and exercise physiology in Chinese medicine, and why people overexercise, the cultural forces and the physiological forces, the physiological consequences, and how to treat with herbs and acupuncture. And I think that's on March 18th. I sent out a mailing about it today. Okay, guys, lots of love.
Thank you, Lon.
Thank you, everyone. A few of you can stay on. I think a few of you know who you are. I'd like to catch up with you. How do I stop? Oh, there we go.